I went to the earliest screening possible in my town for Kraven the Hunter, right? Sat down, started watching it, and it's the whole, origin story of why he became the hunter, and it's dull as dirt. It's bad, horrible dialogue. Acting's atrocious across the board. And it was around, I want to say, the 45, 50-minute mark when we're finally getting past all that. We're finally getting a little bit into the Aaron Taylor Johnson of it all, who plays Kraven the Hunter, Sergei Kravenov. And all of a sudden, I just started hearing this noise from behind me. And I was the only one in my screening, by the way. I was the one sole sap watching Kraven the Hunter. I just started hearing, and like it was like this whirring. I was like, what's that sound? And all of a sudden, I heard a, and then boom, the screen just went to white. It just went to white. And I was like, what the hell just happened? It was like in the movie, does the movie end that way? Is that like a trick on the audience? And I realized, oh my God, the projector for the film died. Malfunctioned. And I went outside to the front and I said, hey, I'm like the one sap seeing Kraven the Hunter. And they're like, oh, my condolences. I'm like, thank you. I think the movie, the projector died while playing the movie. And they're like, oh, really? We'll go check. And they came back and they said, yep, projector's dead. And I was like, oh my God, the movie was so bad. The projector's like, I can't do it, man. And it just gave up. Let's get into it. Everyone's craving right now, including me. And I overindulged in Kraven the Hunter. No doubt about that. All right, my friends, let's go ahead and start this. Let's get into my review for Sony's Kraven the Hunter. So here we go again. Another awful entry in Sony's Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe, taking despicable villains, evil villains, psychotic villains, and turning them into loving heroes. They just want to do the right thing. That's what they want to do, right? Let's not adhere to the things that have defined these characters for decades. Just an infinite source of inspiration. All these different comics are like, nah, we don't need any of that because we're Sony and we're going to butcher all this shit. It's what we do. And this is what we come to expect, from the likes of Tom Rothman, the head of Sony Pictures, one of the greediest and just most stupid movie executives out there right now. Before he joined Sony, Tom Rothman, of course, he shepherded some of the worst entries in the X-Men franchise. It was his idea to sew Deadpool's mouth shut in X-Men Origins Wolverine, the character that is sometimes called, often this is his nickname, the Merc with a Mouth. So that's what we're dealing with here. And this film is just the latest product from producer Avi Arad, the bloated, pus-filled orc creature that has pretended to be a human for decades. The just morbidly obese and rotting, disgusting albatross that is hung so heavily on Spider-Man's neck and the neck of his many supporting characters. The guy who recently produced such films as Borderlands, one of the worst movies this year, Venom, the Venom trilogy, Madam Web, all coming from Avi Arad, the one that's been putting forward the best stuff when it comes to Spider-Man for years. These are the people making the decisions for these live-action Spider-Man-less Spider-Man films. And that's the thing, like, all of these movies that Sony has made in this bizarre and wretched universe, in my honest opinion, have been dreadful. I know that there are fans of the Venom films, especially the first one. I just think all those movies are bad. From the first one, the second one, the third one. I think the second one's the worst one, but the third one, I don't know. It's up there. It's kind of like head and shoulders right next to the second one, in my opinion. And not a great conclusion to that story whatsoever. And just, I'm not even the biggest Venom fan, but even then, I'm just like, you could do better with this character than what we got. And then you had Morbius, one of the biggest jokes for years. You know, we all morbed watching Morbius, and it was not a pleasant experience at all. I mean, the internet managed to trick Sony into releasing the film a second. That movie has the amazing distinction of being a flop twice. It's incredible because people were posting all these memes and GIFs and funny videos mocking the film, and those brain-dead morons, Tom Rothman, Avi Arad, and their sycophantic acolytes, they all said, people love the movie, put it out again, and it bombed again. Morons. And then, of course, you know, just recently, Chad, it feels like an eternity ago. It feels so goddamn long ago, but it was just like 10 months ago. We saw the release of Madam Web, one of the biggest critical and commercial flops of 2024. One of the biggest critical commercial flops of the year. A movie that has been derided and mocked and ridiculed, and it deserves every single bit of that because it is a wretched film. And here we are with Kraven the Hunter, which has been delayed time and time again. I think this movie was supposed to come out like early in 2023. But the writing was on the wall. Sony knew that they had a stinker again with this thing. And they, God, who knows how many reshoots and different cuts and edits of this movie there are. And I'm sure there's a ton. Believe me, after watching this movie, it's very obvious that this thing has been edited all to hell. And there's a lot of footage on the goddamn editing room floor, which may or may not see the light of day. I hope it doesn't. And this movie shouldn't have seen the light of day, in my honest goddamn opinion. But it's been delayed for so long, well over a year, and here it is. And listen, like, as you guys know, or may not know, I'm a big fan of Kraven the Hunter as a character. I really like him. He's one of my favorite Spider-Man villains. One of my favorite Spider-Man stories of all time is Kraven's Last Hunt. A very dark Spider-Man story that really got into the psychology of Kraven the Hunter, really showed his how truly psychotic and sick he was, and his drive to prove that he is better than Spider-Man. It's a wonderful story, and I recommend checking it out, especially over this movie. And even if you've seen this movie, which my condolences for you, my apologies for you, you have to suffer like I did. But if you need a palate cleanser, read that book. But even going in this film, I was like, despite my love for this character and not wanting to see him just eviscerated in the worst ways possible, I thought, like, it can't be worse than the Venom films. It can't be worse than Morbius. It can't be worse than Madam Web. Chat, I think Madam Web's got stiff competition this year. Madam Web didn't expect Kraven to come in there and just start gutting her and say, like, I'm even worse than you. I think there is an argument to be made, a real good argument to be made, that Kraven the Hunter is possibly worse than Madam Web, which is mind-boggling. It's hilarious. It's also a little sad because I love this character. But before I even get to all that, I gotta tell you about my theater experience watching Kraven the Hunter. So as I posted on social media and things, I said that I had to watch 3 hours of that film. I think I have the distinction. I think I am the person that has seen, outside the fucking morons that made this movie and participated in it. I think I have the lowly distinction of seeing the most of this film than any other reviewer out there, any other audience member out there. I watched 3 hours of Kraven the Hunter. So I went to the earliest screening possible in my town for Kraven the Hunter, right? Sat down, started watching it, and it's the whole, origin story of why he became the hunter, and it's dull as dirt, it's bad, horrible dialogue, acting's atrocious across the board. And it was around, I want to say, the 45, 50-minute mark, when we're finally getting past all that. We're finally getting a little bit into the Aaron Taylor Johnson of it all, who plays Kraven the Hunter, Sergei Kravenov. And all of a sudden, I just started hearing this noise from behind me. And I was the only one in my screening, by the way. I was the one sole sap watching Kraven the Hunter. I just started hearing, and like it was like this whirring. I was like, what's that sound? And all of a sudden I heard a, and then boom, the screen just went to white. It just went to white. And I was like, what the hell just happened? It was like in the movie, does the movie end that way? Is that like a trick on the audience? And I realized, oh my God, the projector for the film died. Malfunctioned. And I went outside to the front and I said, hey, I'm like the one sap seeing Kraven the Hunter. And they're like, oh, my condolences. I'm like, thank you. I think the movie, the projector died while playing the movie. They're like, oh, really? We'll go check. And they came back and they said, yep, the projector's dead. And I was like, oh my God, the movie was so bad. The projector's like, I can't do it, man. And it just gave up. Kraven the Hunter hunted down that projector and killed it. So I was presented with some options. They said, well, we can give you a ticket for a future screening some other day. I'm just like, I just got here and I want to watch the movie because I want to review it for you guys, obviously. And I'm like, it's like, is there anything else I can do? And they're like, because then they wouldn't give me my money back. They're like, I said, well, another screening of it is starting in like 40 minutes. Do you want to watch that one? I'm like, no, I don't. But that's what I chose. And so I got that screening and I sat all the way in the back because I had to sit through. Thankfully, you know, I never do this, but I did my phone open. There were like 5 other people in the theater, 5 other poor saps that were there. And I was just all the way in the back as the opening was just playing in those first 45 minutes until then we got to the part that I just was not able to see. So I have seen the opening of Kraven the Hunter twice, technically, the first 45 minutes. And then I saw everything that happened afterwards. So I've seen 3 hours of the film. I was able to take some notes, though, during those first 45 minutes, which, again, I usually don't do, but I thought, fuck it. I'll be able to get away with it. I'll put my phone on like you know, make sure that the light's not shining or anything. And they didn't even know. They didn't even goddamn care. So that was my wonderful experience seeing Kraven the Hunter. So you can understand as to why I'm just tired because this movie takes a lot out of you, chat. Believe me, there's some laughs to be had. Not intentional laughs, unintentional, no doubt about that. But my God, this film is absolutely wretched across the board. The story, such as it is the complete antithesis of what the Kraven the Hunter character is and has been for decades, literally since his inception. The film follows Sergei Kravinoff, who has taken the name Kraven or the Hunter. He doesn't call himself, no one calls him Kraven the Hunter in the movie. It's either just Kraven, a.k.a. the Hunter, which is weird because Kraven is also like a name that he just took. So it's like Sergei Kravinoff, a.k.a. Kraven, a.k.a. the Hunter. Stupid. Anyway, he has taken upon himself to hunt down the most evil and notorious criminals across the planet, especially those who harm animals, chap, because Yes, this is what I was saying years ago when they first announced this. It's like, this is what they're going to turn him into. They're going to turn him into a hero, and he's just going to want to protect the animals. And that's exactly what he does. He doesn't hunt a single goddamn animal in this movie. Like, most of the time, he's hanging out with them. They have, like, a mutual respect, like, a couple of head nods, like, hey, Kraven, a.k.a. the Hunter, we're really into you, man. Thanks for protecting us. Like, no problem, man, no problem. The one animal, he kills one animal, and it's a fish. He kills a fish, and he's very upset about it. It's like, I'm so sorry. Oh, and the fish's like, no, and kills him. kills him. And then they don't say he's a vegetarian, which I thought like, oh, just fucking do it. But if you notice throughout the movie, anytime there's like a plate of food in front of him, it's all vegetables. It's all lettuce. It's carrots and tomatoes and fruit. He doesn't eat other than fish. He's like, I forget what of those the diet that is. Like, I don't eat animals, the exception of fish, and everything else is just vegetables and beans and shit. And that's what he eats. That's what he does throughout this movie. I'm just like, he's a big game hunter. He's the greatest hunter on the planet. He's the greatest big game hunter on the planet. He's hunted all these animals, like in the comics, and he hunted them so much that he got bored, and he said, you know what, I'm going to start hunting humans. And he was doing that, and he's like, I'm bored of this. This isn't much of a a challenge for me. I'm gonna start hunting superhumans. And he's like, I'm gonna go after this guy in New York City, Spider-Man. I'm gonna hunt him. And then Spider-Man kicked his ass. And Kraven became obsessed with trying to take down Spider-Man for years until it drove him even crazier. Until he said, enough is enough. I'm gonna prove to you that I'm even better than you. And then he did. And then he put a shotgun in his mouth and he blew his brains out. That's Kraven the Hunter. That's who he is, okay? Not whatever the fuck this is in this film. And that's what happens. Like, Kraven, he has daddy issues because Russell Crowe honestly is more Kraven the Hunter than Aaron Taylor Johnson is in this movie. Because he's a son of a bitch. He's like, all right, my two sons, Kraven, or I guess Sergey, and Dimitri, who's the chameleon in the movie. We'll get to him in just a bit. You guys are pussies. You guys you suck. You're pussies. I don't really love you. I like you more, Sergey, than Dimitri, who you're kind of like you're my bastard, but whatever. Hey, your mom, she fucking went crazy. She was in the loony bin. I think she offed herself. I don't know. So I'm taking you out of school because I don't want you guys to be pussies anymore. And we're going to go on a safari in Ghana. And so they go on a safari in Ghana and they don't like it because their dad's a dick, right? And then fucking Pollux Troy from Face Off is there, and he's the biggest pussy out of anybody in this movie, and he becomes the rhino later on. We'll get to that in just a bit. And during all of this, Kraven is attacked by a CGI lion that mauls him a little bit and drags him off to not eat him, just be like, all right, well, I just wanted to show you, I just want to teach you a lesson. And then Calypso shows up, and she has a potion that was given to her by her grandma, who's like a mystic. And even though she's never met, Sergey before, she's like, I'm going to take care of this little white boy. And so she pours some of that inside of him, which then mixes with lion blood. It mixes with lion blood, chat. And the secret magic mumbo-jumbo potion, in combination with the lion blood, gives him superpowers, right? And then he's able to heal. He has agility. He has Kraven eyes where they glow yellow and orange, and then they're like binoculars sometimes, and he's able to see from miles away for no reason. Yeah, and so because he experiences this, he's like, you know what? Fuck my dad. And even though I love my brother Dimitri, I'm going to leave him with my dad so then I can go to Siberia to do the thing that I'm called for. Because I just have this in me. I want to protect animals. I want to protect animals more than anything else. And I want to hunt down the people that hurt animals and other people. And that's what he does the rest of his life. He somehow acquires infinite wealth to do all these things. And that's where we then have Aaron Taylor Johnson in the movie. And listen, none of the characters in this film are good. They're all terrible. The acting is bad. The writing for them is atrocious. The dialogue is at best laughable, and most of the time just dull and boring. Exposition filled. We go through so many scenes of exposition and a character just saying someone's name 5 times at the end of every single sentence, which is I just hate that. Maybe that's a pet peeve for me, but it's why do you just keep saying the name of this character after every sentence, through the last 5 sentences? It's very bizarre, very bizarre. It's all right, fucking dum-dums watching this movie. Sony and, Tom Roth and Avi Arad and JC Chandor, whatever the fuck his name is. It doesn't matter. I don't care. They're like, listen, this audience is going to be a bunch of dummies, and so they got to know the names of the characters, so we're going to say their names as often as we possibly can through the dialogue, and they're like, all right, sounds good, and that's what they do. But everyone's terrible across the board. Some people have been praising Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance. Kraven, I think he is dull as dirt. He has the charisma of a potato. He has the charisma of a carrot, some sort of root vegetable. That's what I would say his personality is like as Kraven the Hunter. Does he look good? Does he have a nice physique? Of course. He definitely has a nice physique, but that physique doesn't make up for a lack of a personality. You know, it's just not on display. He just feels like he's coasting. And Angela Johnson, like, there's some roles where I'm like, wow, he's really good here. And other roles, I'm just like, damn. I've always been really mixed on him as an actor. I've never been really over the top, over the moon about him. But here he is, it is rough. Again, the screenplay for this movie is doing no one any favors, but I just found him completely dull and no charisma. Kraven the Hunter, he needs to be charismatic. Like, yes, he used to be a badass and all these action scenes and hunting things, absolutely. But, like, when he speaks, it's like, all right, everyone shut the fuck up because Kraven the Hunter is speaking. Like, for example, in the Spider-Man 2 video game that came out last year, that take on Kraven is the best adaptation of Kraven the Hunter we've ever had. Like, outside, obviously, the comics. I was like, that's that guy. There he is, where he's just this leader. You understand why he's a leader and using his wealth in this way and how obsessive he is. Like, it's on full display. Like, those writers did a great job of adapting the character here. They could give a shit less. They don't care, because what Sony wants to do and what they have done is to take Marvel villains for the most part, other than, fucking Madam Web. But who cares about Madam Web? No one. And then turn them into heroes and then I guess to fight Spider-Man one day, or no, I don't even know. But Aaron Taylor John's performance is just bad and bland. Ariana DeBose as Calypso, I think she is the absolute worst person in this movie. Her character is atrocious. Her line delivery is so bad. Like, because we see a younger version of her, and the little kid's like, whatever. The kid's just, most of the kid's just like responding to exposition that her, mystic mumbo jumbo witch grandmother is giving her. But once we get to Ariana DeBose, like, we're at a funeral for a friend of hers that died off screen, that was killed by the rhino or something. I was like, all right, whatever. And so she's supposed to give this really heartfelt eulogy about her friend. And during the eulogy, like, it's like she's sounding like super sad, and the camera's like right up on her face. And there's like, okay, there's supposed to be tears here, and there's not. Her eyes are as dry as a desert. There's no, and she's like, her voice is like catching her throat. It's like, okay, this is when we should see tears. When she be crying? None of that. I'm like, oh my God, this girl can't cry. She can't do it. Take away her Oscar. Plus, a lot of her dialogue has been redone with ADR. Just like Madam Web, it's crazy. This film has many of the same problems that Madam Web does, where it's not just her, but other characters as well. Well, they'll be speaking, and their lips will not match their dialogue, right? Or there'll be a scene where a character is running, and like the camera's like, it's kind of a medium shot, and it's like to the side, and like, all right, they're running right now, and then suddenly they just start speaking, their lips aren't moving at all. It's like, you got to be kidding me. But there are so many scenes with her where she's clearly just dubbed over, and it's just really obvious and really bad. But even then, she gets some of the worst lines, some of the biggest laugh out loud lines in the entire film. My favorite. I'm going to spoil this movie, so here's one of the first big spoilers. So at one point, her and Kraven hook up for whatever reason. He tracks her down somehow after she saves him, and she's like, how'd you find me? You're that white boy I saved. And he's like, I am a hunter. It's what I do. All right, sure. And eventually they go to his secret compound, his animal sanctuary, and Kraven's like, hey, you got any more of that like mumbo jumbo lion juice that I can, inject into my tummy? And she's like, no. My grandma, she was the one that was able to make that stuff. And he's like, oh, and what happened to her? And this line killed me. She says, my grandma died, and I never saw her again. That's what happens when people die. You never see them. Why do you have to say, like, yep, they died, and I never saw them again? Well, yeah. That's usually how it goes. That's the level of writing that we're dealing with in this film. Take away her Oscar. She doesn't deserve it. Outside of her, and I think she probably gives the worst performance, because anytime she's on screen, she's absolutely wretched. She's just awful. But then we get to Fred Heckinger, I think that's his name, who is coming hot off of Gladiator 2. And I mean hot. I mean like hot diarrhea. He plays the more annoying crazy emperor from that film who is just screaming at the top of his lungs throughout that movie and just saying insane. She's the guy that named the monkey one of the councils of Rome, a senator of Rome. It's like, all right, sure, whatever. He plays Dimitri, who is the half-brother of Kraven, who eventually becomes the Chameleon, who's actually like one of my other favorite Spider-Man villains. I think he's super underrated. He's a master of disguise, able to use all different masks and manipulate his voice to pretend to be different people, commit all these crimes and stuff, and one of the first villains that Spider-Man ever fought, right? I've always wanted to see Chameleon in live action, and my God, like, don't worry, chat. Kraven's not the only casualty in this movie. The Chameleon's also a major casualty, too. How they showcase his abilities is laughable, where most of the time he's just doing impressions of singers. He's just doing cover songs. Like, there's a whole bit where he's in his father's club, who their father's Russell Crowe. We'll get to him in a second. And he's just doing covers for, like, Tony Bennett songs. That's what he does in like other notable songs. And it's just done horribly because they just take the actual audio, from Tony Bennett and just put it over, his not singing, his lip singing, and it's like, come on, are you kidding me? And like, again, Sony's not exactly subtle when it comes to making references to like their characters and their connections to Spider-Man. And there's a great one where Russell Crowe is talking to this gangster and he's like, look at my son. He sounds just like Tony Bennett. He is, what is it called? He is like Chameleon. Oh, no. And he's just a pussy in the entire movie. He's just a coward, and he's always called, weak and stuff. But the one thing is, like, he loves his brother, and his brother loves him. Like, they don't really show the antagonistic. Like, Chameleon always, like, loved Sergei, but Kraven was always, like, always back and forth with him. Like, he was abusive. Either physically or emotionally abusive, but then he would sometimes show love. It's always back and forth. Here they just kind of love each other in the film, and that's fine. I don't mind that at all. But then it makes what happens at the end of the movie just completely ridiculous and just nonsensical. And again, we'll get to that in just a bit. But wow, what a waste of actually a really cool, interesting Spider-Man villain with how do you say, Chameleon? And then Russell Crowe, who is Nikolai Kravinoff. This is pretty much Russell Crowe, I would say, on autopilot. He just plays generic bad guy, abusive father. He's a dick just to be a dick. Like, he doesn't like his sons, even though he wants, Sergei to take over the family business because he's a gangster and everything. The thing is, though, because his whole thing, he's, like, obsessed with the hunt. He's obsessed with hunting animals, improving his strength and things. Like, he technically is more like Kraven the Hunter than Aaron Taylor Johnson is in the film. And funny enough, like, I talked about this back in the day, like, especially, like, during Gladiator, like, when that movie had come out. And, then a year or 2 years later, we had Spider-Man. Like, and Sam Raimi said, like, I would have loved to have done Kraven the Hunter. I think Russell Crowe would have been a great choice. That era of Russell Crowe. Not this era of Russell Crowe. He's not going to be able to do it. He ain't running around. Russell Crowe, he's not moving faster than a waddle in this movie. He don't got a lot of hustle. He don't got a lot of pep in his step. It's a waddle for most of it, chat. And his accent is Russian, maybe? I don't know. It's a Russell Crowe accent is all I'll say. But outside of just being antagonistic to his kids and saying somewhat nefarious things throughout the movie, he's not really giving you a lot here in this film. And then we get to one of the other worst people in this movie, Alessandro Nivola, fucking Pollux Troy from Face Off. That's how I remember him, chat. Pollux Troy from Face Off, who plays Alexei, who becomes the Rhino. I'll tell you right now, he just does like random weird shit in the film. Like, there'll be so many moments where it's so funny. Because they set him up initially like he knows Kraven. He wants to partner with not Kraven, Russell Crowe's Mr. Kravinoff. And Mr. Kravinoff is like, you are a pussy, I don't like you, get out of my face. I don't like to hear you talk. And that apparently pissed him off, right? And he's also like sick with some sort of disease, some debilitating disease. And so he ends up contacting Dr. Warren Miles, or I forget if it's Warren Miles or Miles Warren. Basically the Jackal. They name drop the Jackal in this movie like several times, and he's a Spider-Man villain, kind of the one that starts the clone stuff and everything. We'll get to some of that later on. And I guess he gave him rhino goop, right? They don't really explain how he becomes a rhino. Like, he's like gone for a good portion of the movie and then comes back, and he wears like a fanny pack. He wears like, I guess the backpack, but it's like super slim. And what he does is he has this tube that connects to his tummy, and in the tube is rhino goop. And or it maintains his goop. I don't know. Any case, when he doesn't get the goop, he becomes a rhino, right? He kind of has a physique that transforms and gets gray and scaly, and we see that like twice, and then he becomes the rhino in the last 10 minutes of the movie, and then dies. And then just dies, and he's lame. He looks terrible. He does like random shit. Like, he gets like super goofy and over the top. Like, there'll be a scene, for example, like he has this underling guy, his number one guy. Yo, Bob, you're my number one guy, except he's nowhere near as good as, you know, the Joker and Bob the Goon. And this guy, his fucking henchman's no Bob the goddamn Goon. Any case, there'll be like his henchman is informing about something. He'll just suddenly go, he'll just do that. And it's like, what? Why did that just happen? And there's no explanation as to why. It's utterly bizarre. So he transforms in the rhino at the last 10 minutes of the movie. He doesn't even say, I am a rhino. You know what? They call me a rhino. It's like, I don't know, you got a skin condition pretty much. And he gets his ass fucking kicked. Like, severely. And then he gets stampeded to death by some CGI water buffalo. I am not joking. Like, water buffalo. Because, you know, Kraven he talks to animals, or has some sort of, is able to communicate with them, and they do what he wants them to do, and they trample his ass to death. And that's the end of the rhino. Spoiler. It doesn't matter, chat. But he sucks. There's another, like, obscure Spider-Man character in the D-list villain, which I'm not against, though, is the Foreigner, played by Christopher Abbott. Now, the Foreigner is just kind of your straight-up kind of like assassin, you know, wearing the black turtleneck, all that, doing the thing, doing all these dirty deeds for a lot of the criminal elements of New York. Like in the comics, like the Kingpin and Hammerhead and Silvermane, like that with the Rose. You know, I'm like, oh, the Foreigner, yeah, I know about him. And he kind of is like that, except they gave him like weird psychic powers, or he's able to mesmerize people. I guess he's a combination of several villains, but they call him the Foreigner. And he's able to, like, he has these beautiful eyes, shit, these beautiful brown doe eyes. You get lost in them. You get lost in them so much you kind of freeze up for like 3 seconds, and then he kills you. So that's what he does. That's his thing. And, you know, he hates Kraven because Kraven killed his mentor off screen that we never met. And he develops a drug. Okay, the movie just introduces things randomly. And so at one point in the film, it's the beginning of the third act, which is awful, and he is explaining to the Rhino that I invented this drug that it does 3 things. Here's the first thing. Once it hits you and it hits your bloodstream, your worst fears seemingly become real. You start hallucinating your worst fear, okay? The second one is your organs shut down, so you start shitting yourself. Right, okay. Third one is death. It's like, okay, makes sense. Hilarious moment in the movie, chat. They always say, like, Kraven has no fear. Kraven the Hunter fears nothing. He seemingly has no weaknesses, maybe other than his family. But for the most part, there's no animal on the planet, no man that Kraven the Hunter feels. Well, he gets shot with one of these little scarecrow fear toxin darts, and apparently Kraven is terrified, chat, scared to death of spiders. He starts tripping balls. It's like, oh, oh! He starts seeing all these spiders. They're under his skin, and they're like falling down from the treetops. He's like, oh, oh! It's like, oh, this is how you're establishing it, his connection to Spider-Man, and how he wants to hunt Spider-Man is because he's afraid of spiders. Like, that's what you're doing, Sony? This is the level of writing that we are dealing with in Kraven the Hunter, okay? That's what it is. And he gets shot with an arrow, the Foreigner does. He gets shot with an arrow, he dies by Calypso, because Calypso says, I'm really good at archery, and because she is incompetent and is lame in the movie, and they need to give her a moment where she kind of wins. I'm getting a hair off my mic. Just want to get this hair off, chat. Yes, indeed. There you go. And she shoots him to have an arrow. He dies. Whatever. And yeah, I guess that's all the characters in the movie, really. I mean, there's other people, but who gives a shit, really? And listen, it's not just, I don't want to just, criticize the actors in this, too. I want to criticize the people behind the camera. Namely, J.C. Candor, whatever the hell his name is, chat. I've seen some of his movies. I saw Margin Call years ago. It's kind of a political thriller. I saw it. I remember nothing of it. I know Kevin Spacey's in it. Outside of that, I don't remember a thing. I don't think I disliked it. I don't think I was over the moon about it. I guess it was fine. He directed a movie I actually do like. It's I think it was called All Is Lost with Robert Redford, which is this cool survivalist movie where it follows like Robert Redford, who's like lost in sea on his boat, dealing with the storm and stuff and the elements. It's actually pretty good. And then he did another action film, which a lot of people liked. I didn't really care for it, called Triple Frontier. I thought it was really mediocre, but some people liked that movie. In any case, he did this, and of course, he's been coming out and saying, like, come on, guys, listen, I know, you had some of these movies and whatever, people were disappointed by them, but, Kraven's different. Kraven the Hunter's different. Just give the movie a chance. And I'm just like, shame on you. Shame on you for saying, like, come on, guys, just give the film a chance. It's really good. It's like, no, it's not. And I understand. He has to try to sell the movie and everything, but just to say, like, no, guys, no. Kraven the Hunter. This movie's on another level. You don't understand. Like, this is the future of Sony's Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe. It certainly is not. It's the last of them, apparently, allegedly. We'll see. So he deserves a lot of blame for how poorly directed this is, and just the technical stuff, which I'll cover more in just a bit. But yeah, just a failure across the board. And this is also like the writers behind this. This film, I think, has 3 writers: Richard Wenk, Art Markham, and Matt Holloway. Richard Wenk, who's probably best known for being the man behind the Expendables films, which is like, oh man, that's a high pedigree right there. I've never liked any of the Expendables films, and I think every single one that has come out has been worse and worse and worse, over time. The most recent one was atrocious. It was one of the worst movies I saw last year. He's one of the writers in this, Art Markham and Matt Holloway, I believe, writing a duo. Their last 3 projects were Transformers: The Last Night, Men in Black International, and Uncharted. I mean, it makes sense why Kraven the Hunter is so bad. It's like, that explains that on the writing side, why the story is just so trite and generic. The dialogue, at best, is unintentionally funny, and most of the time is just dull and just filled with copious amounts of exposition. And there's just the leaps in logic are just ridiculous. Things happen for no reason just because the plot requires it to. It's just like, these writers are incompetent. Top-notch writers, indeed. Top-notch writers. And then when it comes to the technical sides of the film, I mean, already it's poorly directed, but my God, the effects and the CGI in this film is some of the worst I've seen in all of 2024 this year. There's not a single living animal in this movie. All the animals are CGI. And it's very reminiscent of the CGI monkeys, the alien mutant monkeys, and the sharks from Gladiator 2. It's like, take those CGI monkeys and sharks that Ridley Scott shat out of his asshole and just put them throughout the entirety of Kraven the Hunter. CGI lions, tigers, bears, oh my, along with a CGI hawk and like a shit ton of CGI buffaloes, a CGI rhino. It's like none of them look, a CGI like snow leopard, panther thing, like terrible. The action scenes, like some people were saying like, oh, the action's good. I don't agree because so much of the action has like this CGI in it, and the editing is so choppy that sometimes like, what the fuck even happened? Did he slit the guy's throat? Did he bite the guy's nose off? Did he eat his eyeball? Like I mean, it's rated R and there's blood, but a lot of it's like CGI blood. It's a mixture of practical blood, but there's a shit ton of CGI blood, which I really don't like. So like how it's all put together, and the cinematography is just ugly. Like we're supposed to be in like these huge wide open areas like savannas and the wilderness of like Russia and stuff. Is like there's a lot you can like show the beauty of these amazing places, and it's just so poorly lit. Everything's flat across the board. The lighting just makes everything just dull, and the editing. There's a ton of stuff on the editing room floor of this movie because it just feels like suddenly we're just jumping. from place to place in like really awkward ways. Like they like fast track the Kraven and Calypso relationship. And it just nothing that happens between them. There's no romance really. There's not even flirting, but it's just like, why does she just immediately trust this guy? It's like, is there scenes missing? There's got to be scenes missing in this movie. There has to be. Even though the movie's like 2 hours long. Plus there were a shit ton of reshoots probably. So that explains why it just feels so choppy and awkward. And then the other thing is, too, as I said before, in referencing Ariana DeBose and some of the other characters, like there's a lot of ADR in this movie, and they make no effort to sync the dialogue to the lips. Someone will be saying something, and their lips won't be moving at all, or there will be saying something, and it's like 2 words, and it's like, guys, come on. There's also a weird character in the movie. In the beginning, Kraven has like this pilot who he just hires with his money. I don't know how he gets the money. Her name is Ellie, and all we ever see of Ellie is she just kind of turns her head like this. We never see like Oliver. It's like, and she like talks to Kraven, and he talks right back, but it's just so weird and awkward. You never see her face. It's just very bizarre. It's like, oh, maybe we should give the pilot a bit of a personality. It'd be kind of weird that he just never interacts with this pilot. And so they give her a little bit of, ADR there, but it's not great. And just when it comes right down to it, chat, before we get into the spoilers, the big ones, the biggest ones, I suppose. I spoiled a lot already. Not that it matters. What bothers me so much about this film, and I think many other people, is that they completely ignore who Kraven is and what defines him. They're afraid to embrace who he is. They castrate this character for 2 hours, or 3 hours in my case. Kraven the Hunter is a psychotic supervillain, okay? He is a big game hunter. He is a poacher. Okay? He's not an animal conservationist. He doesn't hang out with the animals because he loves them. He wants to hunt them to prove that he's better than them. And he gets bored with it because he gets so good at it. And he starts hunting humans, and he finds that way too easy. So he starts hunting superhumans, and he picks Spider-Man, and Spider-Man humbles him. And he becomes obsessed with trying to kill him. Right? Until it drives him even crazier, more insane, until he eventually does defeat him and pretends to be Spider-Man for weeks just to prove to Spider-Man that I'm better than you. And then after that, after he feels fulfilled, he has that self-fulfillment, he draws himself a nice bath, he relaxes, he has a fucking cigar, he indulges in some wine, some jug wine, and then he goes up to his fucking bedroom, and he takes a goddamn shotgun, chat, and he shoves it right into his mouth, and he blows his brains out. That is Kraven the Hunter, and it's an amazing story, and he's an amazing character, and this film is just not interested in showcasing that whatsoever, because you have so many incompetent people behind the scenes at Sony who could give a shit less about the comics or any of these storylines that they're in possession of, and they produce crap like this. And that's what's been with Sony's cinematic universe of Marvel characters. Scum. What an appropriate acronym to describe this would-be universe. Like, I know there's some people that like the Venom movies. I do not. I think they are terrible films, and especially after coming off of 3, it's just like, what a waste of a character. I'm not even the biggest Venom fan. Even now I'm saying, like, you could do more with this character, and we've seen it in Spider-Man 2, for instance, the video game. I think that's been one of the best adaptations of Venom of all time. What they've done, completely lackluster and disappointing. Morbius is a joke, as we all know. We've been joking about it for years. Madam Web's one of the worst movies this year. It shouldn't have been made. It's dull as dirt, and now we have Kraven, which is the period, I guess, at the end of this universe. The final, not the final roar or shout or scream. It's a whimper. It's the it's the sound I heard at the theater when the projector died. The last gasp of Sony's horrible Spider-Man-less Spider-Man universe. Kraven the Hunter is absolutely one of the worst movies of the year. It deserves all of the criticism people have been giving it. At best, it's unintentionally funny. At worst, it's boring. So that's my thoughts on the film.